Hi, my name is Abdul,
And my name is Abdul.
and today our ILP presentation will be about the poem I Am Vertical by Sylvia Plath.
Background information. Sylvia Plath was a deep poet who used death and desperation in her poems to explain how she was feeling about life. She suffered from serious depression. There was one of her illness was called manic depression. This led to her being bipolar, so throughout all her poems, you see many shifts of good and bad things. Her poems are based off of her past experience, the death of her father, and her husband cheating on her multiple times. So this caused her to be centered in her poems around betrayal. So she basically focuses on betrayal. Everything she did and felt was real. She expresses her feelings. She expresses it through her feelings, thoughts, and fears. Setting. Plath is personified by nature, so a lot of her work revolves around the setting of nature. For example, a big example was I Am Vertical. Look at this picture. It's a girl laying horizontally. She's just looking out to the beauty and sunset of nature. So she's just basically being jealous of it. This goes with our poem really good.
In the poem I Am Vertical, Plath used a lot of themes. Some of the themes include jealousy, acceptance, inferiority and insignificance, fantasy and reality, life and death, and the main one that most of her works revolve around, depression. I'm going to talk about each one in depth. So jealousy to acceptance. Plath, this was the main one from the poem because this was basically the overarching theme of the poem. She went from being jealous about the beauty of nature and how it's all so lovely and alive, and how she's just a depressed person who only wants to die and it's all about death. And then that shows in the first stanza, and later on in the second stanza she begins to become more accepting of nature, and she wants to become with nature and she wants to feel alive, but then she realizes that she can only be one with nature when she's dead, and she begins to accept that. Another theme is inferiority and insignificance. She feels that because she cannot fit in with the nature of life, that she feels that she's inferior to them, and basically she's insignificant because of how jealous she is and the fact that she couldn't fit in. But later on she begins to accept that and she isn't as insignificant anymore. Another one is fantasy versus reality. Fantasy part comes in play when we talk about how the livelihood of nature affects her and how depressed she gets. And she actually faces the reality when she realizes and comes to accept the fact that she will never be unless she's dead. And a main one was life and death. Mostly all her poems are about life and death, most of them, and this one was big on that because she was alive, and she described how she was comparing herself with the plants and how they were so alive, but she didn't feel as if she was. And the fact that she says she would rather be horizontal, meaning she'd rather be dead instead of vertical, that just plays a role in that theme. And the main theme of the whole poem, and like all her other poems, is depression. You can see that throughout the whole poem, and you can just get the mood from that. You feel the tone, you feel how the poem is sad, and it's really about envy and how she's just depressed and not really happy. You never really find any good thing about the poem unless it's talking about nature, in which she is jealous of it. So literary devices. Plath used a lot of literary devices in her poem. Some of them include personification, metaphor, visual imagery, auditory imagery, connotation, tone, and symbolism. And these are only a few that she uses in this poem. Personification, as you can see in line 13, she said, "I walk among them, but none of them are noticing." She personifies the trees and nature and plants and how she walks amongst them and how they aren't noticing, as if they're people, as if you walk past people and they don't notice you. So that's just personification right there. Metaphor, "I am not a tree with my root in the soil," is shown in line 2. She is comparing herself with trees and nature, and she says that she is not them and she can't stand tall as the trees do with their root in the soil. Visual imagery, she used a lot of visual imagery in this poem, and the main one that was interesting was, "Nor am I the beauty of a garden bed," which is in line 5. And this just shows the overall beauty of the garden and the overall beauty of nature. And that just gives you a good visual imagery in your head, and you can imagine a beautiful scene with nature and plants and trees. Another one was auditory imagery. She used auditory imagery in line 6 when she says, "Attracting my share of Oz and spectacularly painted." So she says, "Attracting my share of Oz," so that's basically a sound. When you see beauty, you say ooh and ah, and she mentioned that. Connotation is another one, and she used connotation in line 8 where she said, "Compared with me, a tree is immortal." And the connotation really shows in the word immortal, because that's a strong word, and she chose to use it for a reason, to compare that the tree is way better than her and the tree never dies. It's all life and lively, and she's just mortal. Another one is tone, and you can see the tone throughout the whole poem, but it specifically stated it in line 17 where it said, "It is more natural to me lying down." And you can see how the tone of the poem is all about nature and natural and calm, and you could clearly see that in the poem. The last main literary device in this poem was symbolism. And symbolism basically occurs in the title of the poem and the first line where it says, "I am vertical, but I would rather be horizontal." This symbolizes the whole poem because it's in the title, and because of the fact that vertical symbolizes the fact that she is standing up tall like the trees. Well, she isn't, but the trees are, symbolizing life. And then her rather being horizontal symbolizes her rather wanting to die, which goes back to the depression theme, but that symbolizes the whole theme. That symbolizes the whole poem.
To wrap up this presentation, you can see how Sylvia Plath uses these different themes and literary devices throughout her poems to give a deeper message of her depression. She includes themes like jealousy and acceptance, life and death, fantasy versus reality, and the main one, depression. You can see these themes when she uses it through literary devices such as metaphor, personification, imagery, connotation, tone, and the main one, symbolism. The variety of literary devices helps find deeper message in our work and the bigger meaning.
Many people wonder why she writes so much about death and depression in her poems, but Sylvia clearly has main reasons to why she writes about it, and she expresses it well when she's mentioning all these themes that revolve around her depressed life.